Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the DFS Army Killshot podcast. I'm Kyle Marley. With me this week is Gordo Gambles, and we're going to break down this UFC 283 card for you guys today. You guys can follow Gordo on Twitter at GamblesGordo and on YouTube at Plays and Fades Sports. He puts out a bunch of free content each week. He's been crushing it lately, so be sure to go follow him. This is my first time doing a podcast with Gordo, so I'm excited to break down this card with him. How are you doing today, Gordo, and how are you feeling about this first pay-per-view of the year?
First pay-per-view. So what an honor to be joined with you today. It's been a show I look forward to every single week. You do a great job, and I'm happy to be here breaking it down with you. On my end too, like it's daylight. I can actually, do a video without the horrible lighting in my room, which is great. And I'm looking forward to breaking this one down because we do have 15 cards. We do have a lot of violent spots. And as someone who, got DFS in their name, I'm happy to actually talk some DFS because I do personally like this card a lot better from a DraftKings perspective than I do a betting perspective. So I'm happy really just to go over and talk about both sides.
Perfect. Yeah, people love when it's DFS heavy, but man, you can break down the fights however you want to. If you have any plays you want to give away, feel free to do that. But let's jump right into it with the first fight of the night. We got Stamen Oliveira minus 150 against Daniel Marcos plus 130. And I think it's a really close fight. I don't really have a strong lean either way. I'm hoping you can kind of talk me into one side. Do you like this fight, and do you like it for DFS, Gordo? How do you see it going down?
Well, I will just put one thing out there right now, and I will tell you that I am a Stamen Oliveira hater. I don't think that his style is one that's going to be very productive in the UFC, especially from as he goes up the ranks and fights by the level of competition, because I don't think he has minute winning ability nor dependability in just to beat these higher levels of competition. I think he's got one thing going for him, and that's a decent submission game. But against someone who has decent submission defense, it struggled for me to find a path for him. We also see that he has had what I don't want to say adrenaline dumps or cardio dumps, but he has been shown to gas a few times, whether that be the Contender Series, whether that be in a couple of his regional scene bouts. But the guy is not someone I'm looking to back, especially at chalk. I think that if he's a big underdog, he can have great both DraftKings and betting upside because he can finish a fight with his patented guillotine or his submissions a lot of the time. But in this matchup here, I'm really struggling to see why he was such a hefty favorite at one point. I know he was minus 180. I know even on DraftKings, he's $8,600. I don't know if he has that ability to meet that price tag, meet that betting line a lot of the time. And that really leads me towards the dog. Daniel Marcos was a guy who was 3-year layoff, 2-year layoff, and we didn't really see much from him. But when we did show up to the Dynamite Contender Series, he blew everybody away. He showed a very much improved level of his game. And I think he's really the side for me this week, whether it be from a point fighting perspective, as a decent, cash play as an underdog on DraftKings, or even from the betting line, because I do think he wins this fight a lot more than the line entails. It's just hard for me to get to him in DraftKings GPP purposes because I don't see him getting a finish too often here. And you always have to worry about that guillotine, right, of Stamen Oliveira. So to me, the pick is going to be Daniel Marcos. I think there's some decent betting upside. But because his path to victory is most likely a point style decision, winning these striking exchanges, I don't see him having the highest ceiling on DraftKings.
I would agree. Well said, really, all around. I think that it is pretty much a dog or pass type of fight for me all around because it is kind of like a coin flip to me. I did pick Oliveira as my pick to win, though, just because I was a little bit more impressed with him. I thought he's a little bit more dangerous everywhere. He showed that he would rather – I've seen him look for takedowns anyways, where I didn't see a whole lot of that from Marcos yet. I still got to watch a little bit more Marcos, but I just doubt I have a play on this betting-wise. And I would rather save the $1,000 on DraftKings and use Marcos as a live dog who could go out there and win the striking exchanges. Maybe he could get a knockout himself, actually. So I agree. Let's save the money on this one. Go with the underdog. I think there's a few underdogs in play this week where last week I picked every favorite on the card pretty much, so it was kind of hard to figure out a lineup that I wanted with underdogs. But this week I think there's a few ways we can go, and Marcos is my preferred play on this one, really all around. And if it was I mean, skip that. I'll just say that for 8,600, Oliveira is probably going to need the submission or a knockout to pay off that price tag because I don't see him doing enough minute-to-minute work in order to score heavily in a decision win. So if it comes down to a decision, I think we're on the right side with Marcos. I think he's got a much better chance of paying off his price tag and possibly ending up on the optimal lineup. Maybe we don't need 100 points from the underdog in this fight to be on the 100K lineup, but I think he's got potential here.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting because this is a card with so many underdogs who have such high ceilings but such low floors, right? I mean, all of these guys could all the underdogs here, especially people like someone in Ismail Bonfim or someone like Paul Craig that we'll talk about later. I mean, they don't have that same floor as someone in Marcos, who I do think can survive the first round at a higher clip. But again, they don't have that same first round finish, second round finish upside as those guys. So it's hard to where you want to see you're going to self-orienting your lineups. But from a betting side of things, I do think that Marcos should be not plus money. Let's say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I think Marcos is a much better cash game play because he has a higher floor than those other guys, but he doesn't have quite the 100-point, 120-point ceiling that they do either. So maybe they are better GPP plays, just more risky, more boom or bust. So fit in Marcos where you can, but I'll probably end up fading Oliveira all around. I don't see me making 150 lineups on this card, but if I do, maybe Oliveira makes 5-10% max.
All right.
Next one on the card, we have Josiane Nunes minus 540 against Zara Farren plus 420. And man, when I saw that price tag on Nunes, I was really hoping to find something in Farren to get me to bet that. But there was just nothing there that made me impressed with her at all. So I do agree that Nunes should be the pretty heavy favorite here. She's the much more powerful striker. This should be a striking match. She's a high volume striker as well. I don't see either one of them looking for takedowns or having success with them if they do. So I expect Nunes to go out there and win a striking match. I do think she's very in play for the TKO here. And that's probably what we're going to need is an early TKO from her to pay off a $9,500 salary on DraftKings. But I do think she makes sense as a pivot away from a very chalky Jailton Almeida, who we will talk about later. So I'm not against using Nunes here, but I doubt I see any Farren lineups, even if I make 150. So I'll just X her out of my player pool. I really don't think she's got much of a shot here. It's probably the last time we see her in the UFC. But how do you see this one going down, Gordo?
Yeah, you put that very nice, because if I was breaking this down, I'd pretty much just say that Farren sucks. And it's unfortunate because there's no question that she could probably beat me up, but man, she's not going to have much success at this division in the UFC for sure. I mean, $6,700, you look towards having an option to play her, but to me, she's got one path to victory, and it is very, very slim. And that is if Nunes is coached by James Krause, no pun intended. No, I think that the path to victory is there for Nunes. She has not only the power, but she does have some wrestling and some ground advantage in her back pocket. And anybody who is able to take down Farren is going to be at an advantage on the ground, whether it be moving into mount, whether it be looking for submissions, whether it be just ground and pound out of there. That is a path to victory. I don't necessarily think Josiane Nunes is going to take it, and I do think she's going to strike for a large majority of the time, which probably isn't the best decision, because although Nunes does have power, she's going to be at a huge height and reach disadvantage here, which is probably not going to matter in the long run, but it is probably a harder path for her to take to get to victory. But to me, I see this happening. I see it's a Nunes finish, unfortunately, because I was looking for some dog money as well, but it's so hard for me to go out there and want to pay minus 500, minus 600 on someone like Josiane Nunes, who I think is flawed, who I think can be beat. But this is not the person to do it here. So I think they're trying to get Nunes a win. I think they're going to get her one right here with Farren. It's just hard for me to see her beating people other than Farren in the UFC. So I'm trying to really formulate my sentence carefully here, because I do think we can fade Nunes in the future. I just don't think this is the right spot to fade her. I think Nunes wins this fight at a pretty high clip.
Well said. I was thinking that same thing. I can't wait to eventually fade Nunes, and hopefully this works for that future betting line if she goes out there and sparks Farren in the first round, which I could see happening. But I just don't think she'll get a whole lot of ownership on DraftKings because of the people priced around her. So I think if there's anywhere to invest in her this week, DraftKings GPPs maybe is the spot.
Yeah.
All right, next one on the card, we have Worley Alves minus 125 against Nicholas Dalby plus 105. I really only like the Alves side of this one for DraftKings. I think the only path I think Dalby could win a decision just with Alves slowing down and Dalby taking the second and the third round. But I think the only way he scores well or even has a shot at 100 points is if Alves completely gasses after the first round and then he puts it on a gassed Alves and just does whatever he wants in the second or possibly third round. I think he could score well that way. I just don't think he can really put up a pace to gas Alves. I think it would be him just weathering some crazy storm for Alves to gas out that much. So I'd prefer the ceiling on the Alves side here. I think he is going to be clearly the more skilled fighter everywhere in round one. Maybe he does slow down throughout the fight, but I think even if he slows down, he can go out there and win a decision. But a decision's not what we want on DraftKings. We want the finish, and I think that's in play. So I like some Alves here. How do you see this one going down, Gordo?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup between someone who is very inconsistent and hard to trust versus someone who is very consistently bad at DraftKings scoring. And it's like, pick your poison. What side do you want? Because you look at Dalby's scores and his wins, he's scoring 54 points, 68 points, 85 points is the highest scored. He's just not something that's very, very appealing. I mean, he's been a decision. It's all of his fights except for one, and that was against a PED up Ronson. So to me, Dalby's never a guy I'm really looking to back on DraftKings. And it's also unfortunate on the Alves side because Alves was plus 140. He was plus 130. He was a guy who you could consider and who I was expecting to be an underdog on DraftKings that I was looking to target. But with the line flipped, you have a guy at a favorite price tag who is very inconsistent and hard to trust. And although Dalby probably is an inferior fighter, in my opinion, skill for skill, he is more consistent. And we know what product we're going to get from Dalby. And we know that he is typically a durable guy who's going to go out there and be able to be in there in the second and third round against someone who tires out like Alves. So to me, all the DraftKings upside lays in Alves because he is the more talented fighter, in my opinion. It's just so hard to go out there and trust him in many of your single entry lineups or small max lineups just because he can be inconsistent. He probably could gas out over the stretch, and we don't know what version of him we're getting. So official pick is going to be Alves. I do think he has finish potential to get him out of here as well, but not someone I'm looking to back at too high of a clip due to his, his risk adverse style.
Yeah, it's definitely a boom or bust play every time Alves steps in the cage because most of his action is going to come early in the fights. And if he doesn't get a finish, then he can possibly slow down. But he is like 8,300 on DraftKings and he has 100 plus upside. So if he does go out there, get a first round finish, it's almost going to be a lock for him to be on the optimal lineup. So I do like targeting that ceiling. I will probably get some leverage on Alves here and go overweight to the field. And I'll just X Dalby out of my player pool and hope that Alves does not completely gas out here. I do slightly favor Alves in this matchup, and I think with this card being in Brazil, I favor him a little bit more than I would, in America or somewhere else, to be honest with you. So give me Alves in this one. Alves or pass all around for me.
Completely.
But I don't think I'd want to mess with Alves in a cash game lineup, to be honest with you, because I would rather go with more trustworthy fighters who could show up for 3 full rounds. All right, next one on the card. We have, that's a good one. We got Terrence McKinney, minus 125 against Ismail Bonfim, plus 105. Ismail is the older of the two brothers on this card. They both look pretty good, but this Ismail guy looks like the better boxer. He probably wants to keep this fight on the feet, but it really just comes down to the McKinney side for me, man. McKinney could be a champion if fights were just 1 round long because he's a really good wrestler. He's a really good grappler. He's very dangerous early in fights. He just falls apart after round 1 because you can't really go at the pace that he fights at for 3 full rounds, or else you got to have just amazing cardio if so, and he really doesn't have that yet, but he is young. He can work on that. I'm not completely sold that he would lose a decision or get finished late if this fight is extended past round 1. So I do like McKinney here. I think McKinney's a great DraftKings play because he has 100 plus upside every single time he goes out there. He could just start somebody in the first minute, get that 25 point bonus, and just be a lock for the optimal lineup. I like targeting those type of fighters, but just in general, it's a great GPP fight to target. I believe it's minus 635. Fight doesn't go to a decision. So Vegas thinks that if McKinney doesn't end it early, that Bonfim probably does. So mid-range fight where both guys have 100-point potential. It's one we got to target. I'll take more of a stand on the McKinney side personally. How do you see this one going down, Gordo?
Yeah, just like all of McKinney's fights, we've been flying through the first few breakdowns. So this kind of allows us to slow down and really look at this one because this is a fight that you're going to have a lot of ownership on. I mean, like you mentioned, that fight doesn't go the distance, is juiced, and for very good reason. McKinney is a round 1 fighter, killer to be killed, and that is DraftKings gold. Honestly, I expected to get a much better price tag on Terrence McKinney. I expected him to maybe be maybe an underdog against a guy who is coming off the Contender Series highly touted, but we're getting him at $8,500. And although it is a salary I'm willing to pay for someone who has that amount of upside, I find myself going to him less just because although he has 120-point upside, at what percentage is he able to get someone out there in Bonfim who we haven't really seen struggle too much? Again, that's me being cautious, and there's no secret behind the fact that I'm going to have a lot of Terrence McKinney exposure because he scores very well. Gun to my head, if I'm trying to pick a winner of this fight, I'm going to go McKinney because I do think he has a diverse arsenal in that first round, and he's looking to become a better fighter. And the one loss he does have in the UFC was on short notice, so we haven't really seen too many flaws from him aside from that cardio. I'm going to pick him to get it done early. With that being said, Bonfim should have a ton of leverage in the spot as well, because he's going to be probably low owned, because a lot of people do love Terrence McKinney. He's probably going to have the same finish upside, whether it be in round 2 or round 3. And I do think he's able to do well in a decision, even though I don't think it's going to get there with it being in Brazil as well. So for me, the pick is going to be McKinney, but I have a ton of exposure to both sides. I have the under 1.5 bet from a betting side of things as well. To me, this is a super, super fun fight that I'm pumped to watch. One of my favorite ones on the card, and I will have exposure to both sides, although the pick is going to be McKinney.
I like it. Yeah, I just want this fight in the majority of GPP lineups that I create. Not really a cash game target for me, but I could see me having like 55% McKinney, 30%, 35% Bonfim, something like that. So I want this in most my lineups that I create. I think we're going to get a high score either side, but I do prefer McKinney here. So he'll be close to a core play for me.
Perfect. I do like McKinney too. And he's a nice guy, right? He's a guy you want to back.
Yeah, and he's so exciting in that first freaking round as well. So I almost don't want him to change his style because those first rounds are so crazy. I just want him to learn to do that a little bit longer.
For sure.
All right, next one on the card, we have Cody Stamen minus 365 against Luan Luis Lacerda plus 300. And to me, this looks like submission or bust for Lacerda, but he looks really nasty on the ground. So I think he's very live for that submission. The issue is that Stamen is the better wrestler of the two, and if he could just use that in defense to keep this fight standing, then I think he's the better striker as well. And if that's what he does, we don't really want a 9+K Stamen on DraftKings if he's going to go out there and strike for 15 minutes. That's not going to be on the optimal lineup unless he's able to land a big bomb and get a knockout, which isn't something I really want to trust. So I'd really prefer the Lacerda side on DraftKings, because if he does win this fight, it could be in the first round, and that could be 95 plus points, make it on the optimal lineup as a cheap play, because he is nasty on the ground. He could just jump for a leg, pull guard, and he could possibly make something happen from those positions. So I'm picking Stamen to get the win because I think he's the better wrestler, better striker, probably does get it done on the scorecards by keeping this fight on the feet for the majority of it anyways. But on DraftKings, Lacerda looks like a side who won't be too owned, but does have 100-point upside. So I'd say it's dog or pass for me as my preferred play on DraftKings. But how do you see this one going down, Gordo?
I don't want to say controversial, but I might have a different take than everybody else on this fight here. This is actually one of my highest owned fights, and just for the reason of ownership. I think a lot of people are staying away from this fight and taking the same look as you, as in it's going to be Lacerda finish or pass. And to me, although I do agree that Lacerda has a lot of the finish equity here, I think that Stamen is a very, very sneaky play on DraftKings, just because he's going to come at a very, very low price tag, ownership level, due to the people around him, and Andrade, Byrne, Rodriguez, Moises. I think he's going to be very, very sneakily low owned. And he also, aside from having the much better striking here, because he's going to have the faster hands, more technical striking here. If he ever feels like he's losing these exchanges, which he shouldn't, he has that wrestling in his back pocket. He has takedown upside, although that will probably be to his own demise. The reason I kind of dig Stamen up top is because he's going to be the best level of competition Lacerda's ever faced, and it's going to be a step down in competition for him. We've also never seen Lacerda really excel in the later rounds, if I might say that. I think he's a guy who typically likes to slow down, a guy who, especially fighting at the pace that Stamen could throw on the feet, he could struggle for a late finish down the stretch. All from me to say that this is a fight I'm targeting from both sides, because we all know what Lacerda brings. He brings some jiu-jitsu, he brings some finish equity, he brings some submission upside as well. And I think that's something you want to have in your lineup, especially at his price tag. But on the other side of things, you have low ownership, you have finish equity in his own right, and you have someone who's going to strike very well. To me, this is a very, very sneaky fight to own it, and I'm going to be playing it from both sides for very different reasons.
I like that. I feel like it's those ownership plays that have been killing me lately. They just don't make a whole ton of sense on paper, but anything can happen in this game. And when that 10% guy goes out there and puts up 110 points, I just know my night's over at that point. So it makes sense. And I also think that in fights like this, where the guy needs to get it to the ground, you see a lot more knockdowns because they just fall hoping that they'll jump onto him type deal. Pisses me off when I don't have the guy getting all the knockdowns, but that is what leads to the 3-4 knockdowns in a fight. Stamen's not really that type of puncher, but he is strong. You can just see that the guy is strong, and it wouldn't shock me to see him go out there, get a couple knockdowns en route to a finish here. So that would be a much easier path to the 100K if you're able to get him at low ownership scoring 110 points. So I'm not fully against it. I'm not going to X him out of my player pool, but I still, if I was making one lineup and I had to use this fight, I feel like I would rather have Lacerda. But I really haven't been building lineups yet.
No, I completely agree with that too, because we can't deny that Lacerda has most of the finish equity here as well. But just looking at the tape, although it looks like Lacerda is tightening up that striking, he's going to be so much slower than Stamen. And again, Stamen's going to have to overcome that reach and that reach disadvantage like that as well. But Stamen's going to be faster. I think he's going to be way quicker to the punch. And if Lacerda doesn't like what he's seeing on the feet, he's going to be shooting for legs. He's going to be going out there trying to pull guard, and that can be one of those sneaky ways to accrue points as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you talked me into a little bit more Stamen than I was going to be on anyways. But yeah, it's a good fight. Good ownership fight to target, I think, because they should both be pretty low owned.
Unlike this one.
Next one on the card, we have somebody who will not be low owned. We have Jailton Almeida minus 900 against Shamil Abdurakhimov plus 625. Almeida minus 550 inside the distance, minus 250 to win in round one. So they're giving them minus 250. That's like what, 72% chance, 73% chance of finishing this fight in the first round. He goes out there, gets takedowns when he wants them, dominates guys on the ground. This guy is just a beast. He could probably go out there and land one punch and Abdurakhimov, to be honest with you. So for me, it's easy, Almeida or pass. The only thing is that he's $9,700 on DraftKings. Only the second time we've ever seen that price tag, and it's going to be hard to find the underdogs who can get you up there to him. I want as much Almeida as I can afford. Let me make that be clear, and I will make it a point to get him into cash games if I'm playing cash this week. But I just don't know how easy it's going to be to afford $9,700. I made one lineup so far as my shell, and I wasn't able to get to him. So we'll see how much I'm able to get to. But in my head, I see him being at least 50% owned. Shamil will be completely unowned. I really don't see him having much success. I feel like he would have to somehow get into top control and then drag this fight out late and just kind of stay in top control throughout the fight in order to have a chance of winning. Man, I just don't see that being the case. This is a setup fight for Almeida to get the win. Almeida or pass all around. How do you see this one going, Gordo?
Just one question for you. When does Shamil pull out?
Yeah, I mean, that's my worry, man. Especially like I've been doing this DraftKings Rainmaker stuff where you buy these NFT cards, then you can use them to play in these games and win money, or you could just flip the cards. And I just feel like if I have, $100+ Almeida card in my collection and he pulls out and that just becomes next to worthless, that's my worry, is that I have this freaking NFT that becomes worthless because Shamil pulls out. But on DraftKings, at least, we would get to change our lineup. So hopefully he just goes in there, takes his ass whooping, and we don't have to worry about it. But that's a good point. He might pull out again. This could be another skipped Almeida fight.
Yeah, and I just finished writing my breakdown. This is one of the breakdowns I'm writing this week. And I felt kind of like worried. I'm spending so much time writing about this just for it to be pulled out. I mean, Shamil's pulled out of 8 of his last 10 fights, right? So it's sketchy. But of course, if it were to happen, we all know that it is Jailton's fight to lose. It is his fight to drag into deep waters if he wants to, because in round one, he's going to have all the advantages, whether it be on the ground like Curtis Blades did, whether it be on the feet like Dawkins was able to do. It's Jailton Almeida's world. And although he's $9,700, there's no doubt his ceiling includes quick win bonuses. There's no doubt that his ceiling includes takedowns, first round finish upside. You kind of got to have him in like cash lineups or even a lot of the GPP lines, because he's never scored below 113 points. But man, you're right. $9,700 is kind of tough. Yeah,
he could go out there and score 113 points at 9,700 and just not make the optimal lineup because people below him score 110, 105, and you just can't afford them. So that's more so the issue. It's not that he's not going to go out there and smash. It's that we can't afford him in the optimal lineup. But yeah, we probably spent too much time on this one. Almeida should just go out there and dominate this guy.
All right.
All right, next one on the card, we have the other Bonfim. We got Gabriel Bonfim minus 175 against Munir Lazez plus 150. This is the younger Bonfim, and in my opinion, the more impressive one. This guy looks pretty damn good. He is vicious on the feet. Every punch he throws is trying to take his opponent's head off, and he's dangerous on the ground. The fight hits the ground, and he's been ending them shortly afterwards, locking up these nice, slick submissions. So I think that this Bonfim guy has a pretty high ceiling in the sport. But I also think that Munir Lazez is a very good striker, the more technical striker of the two. I don't think that Bonfim can be as crazy as he has been in recent fights because Lazez is going to be actually bringing it back to him. So I think Lazez is very in play here. And if he can stuff the takedowns, I think he can win a striking-based decision or get a TKO knockout of his own. So I like both sides of this fight. If I had to bet it or play either side in a single entry, I would rather just take my shot on Lazez. I think this is closer to a coin flip than the line indicates. But at the same time, Bonfim can finish this fight on the feet. He can finish this fight on the ground. He can finish it in the first round. So I like both sides of it. And I'll want this fight in half of my lineups. I could see maybe, 30% of each guy, give or take. But I am picking Lazez because of the price tag. If it was an even money price tag, maybe I would have gone with Bonfim, but I'd rather just take the value in the underdog here, and I picked Lazez to get the win. But how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I don't mind that, but this kind of fight kind of reminds me of the Marcos one to start off the night. I mean, the pick for me is going to be Lazez to win this fight, but I don't think he has the same finish equity as Bonfim here, right? So Lazez, I just really see him having like another 80, 90 point decision win upside, which to me doesn't score that well in single entry. So although I do think he wins and has a decent floor, I don't think his ceiling is as high as the people around him. So it's hard for me to get to him. From a betting side of things, though, I don't mind people taking the shot on Lazez. I mean, he's a very accurate striker. We know what he brings to the table. He's fun. And I do think that this is a big step up for Bonfim. The problem I have and the reason I have not bet Lazez is because I think his win condition is that decision. And do you really want to trust the Brazilian judges in Brazil on a Brazilian fighter kind of thing? So for me, pass from a betting side of things. I don't mind your underdog shot, especially in those cash lines. For me, I just don't think he has the highest ceiling, so it's not really going to win you the top prize a lot of the time. But I wouldn't be surprised. Again, completely agree with you though, being a 50-50. If it was a 50-50 line fight, you take the shot on Bonfim. It's not though, so that leads me more towards Lazez's ownership as well. Just don't know where his ceiling is at.
Yeah, I think the ceiling would have to be a knockout, but I think he's the best striker that Bonfim has ever faced so far, and it would not shock me to see Lazez get a knockout really in any round, and we haven't seen Bonfim have to face much adversity yet. This could be the first time, in the big show, so I do prefer Lazez. I think he has the TKO ceiling, but at the same time, I'm not going to make him a core play or anything like that. I could see him being, in a third of my lineup, something like that, as an underdog who was live. And if this is a card where these high ceiling underdogs just they don't win, I could see lineups with Lazez and Marcos making the optimal lineup just by scoring 80 points each and ending up with guys like Almeida or something like that in your lineup as well. So I'm cool with any underdog that I think is live on this card. But with 15 fights, you probably are going to have a high ceiling with these guys hitting 100 in 6 of the different fights. Next one on the card. Nice job, Best Fight Picks, getting this out of order, leaving the co-main event off of here. I don't know what they're doing lately. Or not best, I don't know if I said BFP, but Best Fight Odds. But let's go ahead and go with Gregory Rodriguez, minus 315 against Bruno Ferreira, plus 260. This is going to be another great GPP fight to target because the judges probably won't be needed. I think it's like around minus 500 or so. Fight doesn't go to, minus 550. Fight doesn't go to a decision. And both guys have a ton of finishing equity. I do have a lean in this one for sure, but who do you like in this one, Gordo?
Yeah, it's going to be the bigger favorite for me in Rodriguez. And I do think he has a decent ceiling at his price tag. But before I get into that, man, that last fight, man, was horrific. That was the one thing, like, yeah. Anyways, in doing those fights with those spectacular performances, I mean, he scored 108, 141, 119 in his last 3 wins. The guy has upside. And for me, when you're facing a guy off the Contender Series, a guy who hasn't really proven much, he is the A side here. And I do think he has decent finish upside in his own right, along with some decent jiu-jitsu we never see from him as well. The problem with him is we never know what version. I mean, half the time this guy can't die, and the other half the time he's being knocked out by Jordan Williams, right? So what is the version of him we're going to get here? To me, Bruno Ferreira is a great punt play because if he wins, it's probably a first round, second round knockout that scores very well, and as price tag will probably be optimal. It's just I don't see it happening too often. The picks Rodriguez, I do think he gets a finish a lot of the time. Decent GPP play at 9.1.
Yeah, I like Rodriguez quite a bit here, and I could see him being a reason I can't get to a ton of Almeida because he's so much cheaper, and I think he has close to the same ceiling, to be honest with you. I just think he's so much more skilled than Ferreira everywhere. I think his boxing is levels ahead of Ferreira, but Ferreira is a powerhouse. He could knock him out with one punch for sure. My two worries with Rodriguez in every fight are his durability and his cardio. I worry about his cardio less so in this fight because I don't trust that Ferreira has great cardio himself. But the durability is the main issue because it could just take one shot from Bruno to put him away. I don't like Ferreira's hands very much, but he throws some mean kicks, and it wouldn't shock me to see one of them land and just dead Gregory Rodriguez here. But Ferreira's best work has come from slamming his opponents and getting ground and pound TKO finishes. And that's just, I don't see that going well against Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez is going to be the better wrestler, clearly the better grappler, and you're probably in a world of trouble if Rodriguez gets on top of you. So I am going to be heavy on Rodriguez here. I see him being in close to 50% of my lineups. But at the same time, I do want some hedges on Ferreira because, as you mentioned, he could go out there and get a first-round knockout as a cheap pump play and end up on the optimal lineup. And it could be a no Bruno, no cash slate if that's the case. So I got to have some Bruno. Off the top of my head, I could see me having like 50% Gregory and 25% Ferreira, something like that, where this fight's in 3/4 of my GPP lineups. But again, it's GPP only type of fight. I don't want to trust the floors with these guys in cash games. Look somewhere else where you think it's more likely to go 3 rounds for your cash game lineup. But I do like Rodriguez here a lot. And I think, if this was a video game and you turn knockouts off, I feel like he could 10-8 this guy just with boxing alone. He's just so much better on the feet here. So give me Gregory Rodriguez to go out there and get a finish, probably first, second round.
As long as we don't see any of his veins coming through his foreheads this time, I'm completely okay with it. Action-packed first round here.
Oh, man. I put that picture on my Twitter last time of that cut on his head. And when I woke up the next morning, Twitter sent me a notification that they had to censor my tweet. So you would have to click like, I want to see this picture in order to view it because it was so disgusting. But I shouldn't have even put it on there. People were not happy about having to see that on their timeline originally. All right, next one on the card, we have Ihor Pateria minus 205 against Shogun Hua plus 175. Oh, man, I don't really know what to think of this fight. It's like minus 280, I want to say. Minus 280 fight doesn't go to a decision, so it could be a really good GPP fight to target. And I just don't know what to expect with like a 41-year-old Hua at this point. But how do you see this one going down, Gordo?
This might be I got to be careful here again. This could be a fight that is the key to the slate. And I say that for a major reason is that I'm seeing a lot of love for Shogun Rua. And I get that. I think that Pateria is kind of a fraud, and against better level competition, he could definitely be exposed, and he will be exposed in the future. The problem I have here is if I'm getting Pateria at super low ownership against a guy in Rua who is way past his prime, who is really much a corpse of himself right now, what is Pateria's win condition? I mean, it's a finish, and I think it comes at very, very low ownership. So I'm way more intrigued in Ihor than I want to be because I know he's not worth my coin. I know he's not worth my time. But with such a low ownership, with the implied probability that his win condition's a first or second round finish, you got to have a look at him. Other side of things, if Rua wants to go out there and be, if this is like not like a scripted fight, but if they found a guy that they could give Rua as a retirement fight, this is probably the guy I can get a win against as well. So this is a really volatile matchup for me. It'll really come down to how my ownership projections come out on Friday or Saturday, and that'll probably help me decide it, because if I'm getting low ownership on Ihor, he does have finish potential. I wouldn't mind it.
I like that. I think it probably is a good GPP fight to target. Both sides are cool. We got Ihor minus 125 inside the distance. So Vegas is giving them 55% chance of finishing here. So I definitely think, if he comes in at low ownership, he's a great GPP play for this card. But at the same time, I think this is a great fight for Shogun because Ihor is not very good. And Shogun could even win a decision in this fight, being a shell of his former self. He could also go out there and just tire out Ihor like we saw in his last fight and maybe get a late finish and have a high ceiling. So I think Hua is a similar play to like a Lazez and a Marcos. So I will be getting exposure to Hua, and I picked him to win because of the line. I think that if we can get a little bit of Shogun left, then I think he can win this fight. And maybe it was my biasness just wanting to see him win and then retire on a win that made me pick him to get the dub. But I think this, as you mentioned, is a perfect matchup for him to possibly get a win here. So I prefer Shogun as my preferred play, but at the same time, it would not shock me to see him get knocked out in the first round. And I do want some Pateria exposure as well. So
don't get me wrong, man.
Cool
I'm
loading up
cheering,
on this one.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm cheering for Rua. I just got to put it out there. I hope he wins. I hope he gets a retirement fight. W, but it's going to be an ownership play for me.
I like it. Next one on the card, we have Thiago Moises minus 380 against Melk Costa plus 310. I don't even really know how to say that first name, but there's only like 2 fights available if you type in that first name. If you type in Melk Costa, you can go find a lot more fights, including the one that I posted on Twitter where he was unconscious in a submission for about 90 seconts, which
Terrifying.
I'm like watching this whole fight like this, like, oh my God, what's going on here? But even though I knew he wasn't dead because he's fighting this weekend, it scared the hell out of me, like he was gonna die right there. But I'm glad he's making his debut here. I think Costa is somewhat of a live dog here because Moises is not a great wrestler. I think the biggest edge in this fight is going to be Thiago Moises' grappling. And if he does get the fight to the ground, he probably can dominate. He could finish. He could grind out minutes and win them there. But if he doesn't go for takedowns or if he's not successful with takedowns, I could see Costa being the better striker here, the higher volume striker, and possibly taking this one on the scorecards. So I am interested in him in all formats as a punt play, but nothing where I'm investing too much. And I do think most of the ceiling is on the Moises side, as long as he's going out there with a good game plan and can get the takedowns here. But I would rather target other favorites. I don't know how much Moises I'm getting to unless you could talk me into some more. Who do you like in this one, Gordo?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be the guy to talk you into it. I think that this is Thiago Moises' fight to lose. I think he has the better skill set. He fought the better level of competition. I think he's the rightful favorite. But I agree. If he does not put forward the best game plan, this could look a lot closer than the line entails. And it could look like a typical Thiago Moises performance that goes out there, puts out 60, 70 points in a win that isn't necessarily great. So for me, probably the lowest owned guy at the 9K range is going to be Thiago Moises. But I do think that he wins this fight at a pretty high clip. And if he does wrestle properly or accordingly, if he does grapple correctly, he should have this fight in the bag.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of the Nascimento Hernandez fight from last week, where I really didn't get any Nascimento because I liked the people priced around him more. And I thought the only way to a real high ceiling was him just dominating on the ground, getting that first round submission. And that's what happened. And that's kind of similar here, where that's very in play for Moises. He could go out there and score 111 points or whatever it was that Nascimento scored and end up on the optimal lineup. But I just don't think I'm going to be able to get to too much of them because I would rather target guys like Rodriguez or Almeida or maybe even a Nunes. So I probably will be sub 20% on Moises personally. He won't be in my single entry lineup. I can almost guarantee that. But I could see me being overweight to Costa because I don't think he's going to get any ownership at all. And I think he's in play for maybe a 70-point win if he could go out there and get a striking-based decision. Maybe more so interested in cash games if I need to punt down that low, but I haven't even made a cash game lineup yet. Might not play any cash games. We'll see how that goes. I usually decide closer to the start of cards, but I do like pay-per-view cash games the most, these days anyways, because I think it's a much sharper field. You're getting a lot of the same lineups with the other people. So I've just been doing GPP only lately. But let's move into the next fight where I think this is a great GPP fight on both sides. It's going to be one we have to target. We have Johnny Walker minus 190 against Paul Craig plus 160. I mean, we're probably getting a knockout from a Walker or a submission from Craig. Either way, you've got a good chance at the optimal lineup if that happens. How do you see this one going down, Gordo?
I am like a lot of other people that I just love Paul Craig as a fighter just because he just dies and then somehow wins. I think Lou's favorite quote is that Paul Craig's 9-2 in fights he lost, right? So I love the guy. I think he is a super entertaining fighter to watch. And this is a matchup where you just got two bulls going against each other, guys who are just all offense, no defense. And you're going to want some of these guys in your lineups. And I'm going to be playing both sides, there's no question about it. But if I'm forced to pick a winner, for some reason, I think that the striking discrepancy is larger than the grappling discrepancy, if that makes sense to you. I think that this fight's more so going to play it on the feet. And then for that reason, Walker should be the favorite. And I will pick him to win the fight, although I'm cheering for Craig. If this fight stays on the ground for extended periods of time, it will be Craig's fight. But my gut's telling me Walker here. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, though.
I was the same way. I wanted to pick Craig just because of the line, because it could just go either way. Whoever gets the finish is probably going to win this fight, but he's just not a good wrestler. I can't rely on him to get the fight to the ground where he needs it to take place, and he is just at a big disadvantage on the feet where every fight starts. So I am picking Walker in this one. He's my preferred play. I'd say, I don't know about, I don't think I will be betting Walker here, but I would say that I would start my lineup with Walker, start filling out the rest. And if I need to go down to Paul Craig to move me up somewhere else, then I'm cool doing that. Make sure that this fight's probably in there somewhere. So I do prefer the Walker side, but if I need to save money, I think Craig has steal as an underdog. He's one of those guys who has the 110 point ceilings that we want. It's just that you can't rely on that to happen. It's just, if this fight hits the ground, it might not take long before him to get the submission and break the slate. So just load up on this fight. I'll probably be, I don't know, around 40% on both guys. Hopefully I'll end up having more of a stand on one or the other. It'll just kind of depend on how lineup building goes, I guess. But this is one where I want to take shots on both sides. I will throw money into the pot, hoping that I can hit the right combination and come away big this weekend. But target this fight heavily in GPPs. Avoid it in cash games. Don't touch either side in cash. They both have 0-point floors.
Love it. I completely agree, man. I hope they hit their ceilings more often than their floors. I'll tell you that. I hope it's a round one clash of styles. And in a perfect world, exciting back-to-back battles. Walker knocks Craig out. Craig wakes up, chokes him out. That'd be great. But I hope it's action-packed.
I'm cool with that. Yeah, I'm cool with that, I guess. As long as as long as I have more Craig exposure, I'm cool with that. But we'll see. Either way, I will have exposure. All right, next one on the card. We have Jessica Andrade, minus 475 against Lauren Murphy, plus 380. That's really all Andrade for me. I think Murphy, the only way I would get to Murphy would be as a possible cash game punt if you expect this this fight to go all 3 rounds. But it's pretty much pick 'em to go decision. And I'm going to be Andrade all around. I just don't see me wanting any exposure to Lauren Murphy here. I think Andrade, as long as she can close the distance, she's going to be the better striker, the much more dangerous striker. And if she can close the distance, she can also go for takedowns and really show the ceiling we have seen from her in the past. So I'm cool with Andrade in all formats. I'll be fading Murphy. How about you?
Completely agree. When I filmed my breakdown, this was my shortest breakdown because I think it is Andrade's fight to lose. I think she has this in the bag. I would love to see another 146-point victory out of her, just like she did against Torres. I think she's got this fight in the bag, and I think she is, although a super chalky favorite that you never want to see in women's MMA, I think she's probably one of the better parlay pieces if you're that desperate this week.
Yeah, I'm not really against it. I haven't played that yet, and I don't think I'll be looking too much to parlays, but it's hard to poke holes in Andrade this weekend.
Now, honest. Do you think Andrade gets a finish?
No, I'd say probably not. I picked her to get a unanimous decision. I think she should go out there and look to wrestle because Murphy's not going to offer much off of her back here. And I think the way that she's going to make this fight the closest is if she just has an at-range striking battle with Murphy. That gives her the path to victory. So if you can avoid that, it should be a clear win. So I think Andrade goes out there and gets takedowns and probably just controls the majority of the fight on the ground and makes it clear that way.
I agree. I was close to playing the inside the distance for Andrade, but I was hoping to get a better number. We'll see.
Yeah. Either way, Andrade is always a good TV, I'd say. All right, next one on the card we have Gilbert Burns minus 460 against Neil Magny plus 370. Man, again, I'd say it's favored or passed for me. All the upside, in my opinion, is on Burns. The only way I see Magny winning would be similar to Murphy, just an at-range striking battle because he's got a much longer reach. He is a good striker. He's good at grinding out fights, against the cage and on the ground, but not against a guy like Gilbert Burns, man. Gilbert Burns has a huge grappling edge in this one. You don't want to go to the ground with him. And if Gilbert Burns is looking for the takedowns, then Magny's probably in some trouble here. I also think Burns is more in play for the early knockout. So all favored or passed for me. Give me Gilbert Burns. Who do you like?
Yeah, and although I think it is similar to the last one, I do think that Andrade should win the fight more than Burns, but all the DraftKings equity is on Burns, in my opinion. He has the finish equity here. I think his finish only lines like -500 or something, which I completely agree on. It's Gilbert Burns out of the distance, or it's Magny keeping him at range and winning a decision. Is that impossible? No, it definitely has a percentage outcome, but it's not something I think is very highly likely. I think that Gilbert Burns has the grappling upside. He can control him just like Rakhmonov controlled him, just like Magny's been controlled a few times before. And I think it's Gilbert Burns' fight to lose. I think he implements his game plan. I think he gets a win in Brazil, which is probably what they want to see as well. So I'll Gilbert Burns, although I do think that he has that Magny has a higher chance of winning than a Lauren Murphy, than a couple people down there. I just don't think it's that high in the first place.
Yeah, well said. I agree. All right, and the fight that Best Fight Odds decided to leave off of that card, we got the co-main event, the fourth time these guys have faced each other. Brandon Moreno coming in as a basically pick 'em slight favorite, -115 against Davison Figueiredo, -105. And I've just picked Moreno in the first three fights. I'm not going to go back on my word now. I think it's a very close fight. I'm not going to bet it this time around, but I am going to pick Moreno. He's my preferred play. I would rather save the $200 on DraftKings and get him at 8K, but this is our mid-range priced fight of the week. Both guys have 110-point upside here, so it's going to be one I target pretty heavily. I'll have more so of a stand on Moreno, though, but who do you like in this one, Gordo? How do you see it playing out?
So you picked Moreno all three times, did you?
Yeah, I did.
I
believe I bet him all three times too, so it hadn't gone well.
I bet Figgy. So let's see how it went. I bet Figgy the first fight, draw, so nothing happened. Second fight, I'm like, no way I'm touching this. This line is off, didn't bet it. And then the third fight, I hammered Figgy, and it was a close fight. And I told myself at the end of that fight that if they fight a fourth time, that I would not bet it. I might anyways. Who knows? Because I think this is a very, very close fight. So if I'm able to, if this line keeps coming out of Moreno, I think that any of these fighters at plus money is a solid bet, because I think that they are a perfect clash of styles. And although it's been very entertaining to watch them, this should be the last time I see them fight. Figgy is going to be the power threat. We know that. And although Moreno's been super, super durable, Moreno was knocked down a couple times in the past. To me, it's power versus volume. And in a matchup like this, when it's on DraftKings, both of them you have to have exposure to, because they've scored great recently, especially fighting each other. 110 last time for Figgy, and then Moreno with his VIN, which is probably the most dominant one. He put up 97 there as well. I think the winner of this scores very well, especially at that mid-range price tag. I don't know. I have no idea who's going to win this fight. I think it's a complete coin toss. I will be building with both of them in mind. I'm supposed to make a pick. Right, I'm supposed to. That's our job as a content creator. We have to pick who we think we're going to win. And although I do think it's 50-50, I got to keep going with my man, right? If I've picked Figgy to win, I have to keep doing it. So I'll go head to head with you here. No bet for me. I told myself I wouldn't, but I do think I will have fair DraftKings exposure on both sides due to the volume of Moreno and the power threat of Figueiredo. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, if Moreno moved to plus money, then I'd be interested in placing a bet, but I think I'll just get my investment on DraftKings. I'll get exposure to both guys, but I'll have more Moreno than I have Figueiredo because I like him more and because he's cheaper and I can make more lineups with him that I can't afford with Figueiredo. So I will be on the Moreno side. We haven't seen Figueiredo in a while. He's getting older. The weight cut could be rough. We never know. So I just think that there's more upside in the Moreno, who could be the champion, for years to come. So I'll stick with it, but I might go 1-3, I guess, or I guess one of them was a draw. So 1-2. All right. Main event in Brazil, which kind of had me a little less sure than I would have been anywhere else on this one, but we got Jamal Hill coming in as a slight favorite, -130 against Glover Teixeira, +110. He's like 43 years old now, coming off fight of the year in 2022. We got to load up on this fight. Both these guys have 110 plus ceilings here, and they're priced near the mid range. For me, it's going to be much more on the Hill side. I think Hill puts him away early in this fight. I was already worried about Teixeira's chin going into that jury fight, but that fight was just so crazy. Probably it couldn't have helped him, moving forward. It's got to take more out of him than already has at 43 years old. So if Teixeira is not able to get takedowns here, I don't know that his boxing can hold up long enough, for his chin to hold up to take the shots that Hill's going to be throwing. I think Hill has a big striking advantage here. whether that be power or volume. But if Glover can get this fight to the ground, man, it's going to be all Glover. So could go either way. Both guys have higher ceilings. I wouldn't talk you off of getting leverage on the Teixeira side instead. But for me, I will be heavier on the Hill side. I'd be fine stacking this fight in cash. I don't know that I would want to trust the floors on either side, but I'd be cool stacking it, locking in my 120 points and the win. But I haven't made any cash game lineups yet. So how do you see this one going, Gordo? Are you on the Hillside?
When it got announced, I actually thought, poor Glover. That's one way to go in Brazil. But yeah, I cannot get past how easily Hill has been taken down and controlled. And it's terrifying because as someone who is picking Hill to win, again, gun to my head is my favorite reference, say it way too often. Gun to my head, I'm picking Hill to win. It's terrifying because I don't know if I can go out there and have any financial involvement in it because Glover Teixeira is going to have the ability to take down Jamal Hill the same way Santos was able to. And although Glover was nuked by Rumble when he was nuked by Gustafsson, he's shown decent durability. And I like the point you brought up with the Jiri fight that he's probably not going to help his durability. But I think that Glover is more live than people are making him out to be. I see a lot of love for Hill, and for that reason, it's going to come down to the same thing as the Walker-Craig fight. It's going to be ownership. Whatever fighter I think has lower ownership is probably the way I'm going to go, and so that's going to come down the projections to me. Again, I'm picking Hill to win this fight. I think he's younger. I think the youth advantage is going to be there for him. I think he's got more durability and ability to really put that touch of death power on Glover. It's just you got to have both sides because the finish equity is also there for Glover, the takedown upside, the submission upside. Either way, I think it's a great fight. I would love to play violence in this. It should be a phenomenal main event.
Yeah, like minus 660. Fight doesn't go to a decision. I probably won't create a single lineup that doesn't have this fight. Just 100% all in, which you can make a rule for on the DFS Army Domination Station Optimizer. If you're not a member yet, go sign up using promo code Sleeveless. Save 10% every month. But yeah, I would just lock this fight in 100% of my lineups. In my head, I see me being like 65% Hill, 35% Glover, something like that. So I do want to take a stand on this one. I do favor Hill in this one, mainly because Glover's 43 years old. And I just think that the punches Hill's going to be throwing are going to be too much for him. And if he can land one clean one, he's in play for that 60-second slate breaking bonus as well. So I will make Hill a core play this week, and he'll be my highest on play on the card, I'm guessing. And I think he starches them in the first round. But it wouldn't shock me at all to see Glover go out there and look like he should have been a minus 400 favorite by getting him to the ground and just dominating him in the first round, getting a submission, a TKO, ground and pound victory. It's not a shoe-in at all for Hill. I just think that if Glover is not able to get a takedown, it's going to be a quick night for him. So give me the slight favorite to get the win in Brazil and become the champion. You have anything else you want to add on this fight?
I'm probably less involved. I think I'm probably about 60-40 for Hill, just because of that ownership and that the price tag. But it should be so much fun, man. If you're Hill, what do you do? Do you go out there all gas, no brakes, or do you try to play a bit patient? What's your style? I would
put it on him right away. I mean, he's 43 years old. I feel like if you put it on him fast, kind of like, what was it, Krylov versus Gustafsson fight, where just don't even get him a chance to get going or to get into his game plan. I'd go out there, put a very high pace on him and not give him a chance to go for takedowns, threaten knees, whatever you got to do. Just go out there, try and put him away in the first 2 minutes. But yeah, if that doesn't work, then I don't know. You probably got to start slowing down at some point because I didn't expect Glover to go as hard as he did in that last fight for as long as he went. So I would say the cardio edge in a possible grappling heavy fight, if Glover's having his way, then I would say Hill slows down first, and that would be a worry also. I just don't think he gets there. I think he gets that knockout like, Rumble Johnson over Teixeira. That's kind of how I see it going down.
All right. Wish you the best of luck on that. It should be a great fight.
Yeah, man, I agree. And hopefully we can make a combination of lineups that ends up near or out on the 100K win. But to end each podcast, we like to pick a kill shot, which is somebody that could go overlooked by the field, but could also be the key to that 100K lineup. Do you have somebody in mind on this slate, Gordo?
Yeah, I had someone circled, but with mediocre confidence here. The more I think about it, it's like Okay, he does have that kill shot potential, but is this how I want to put my stamp on my first appearance with you on a podcast? Is this how I want to go down? And you're going to see why right here is because my kill shot of the week is going to be Cody Stamen. And that comes purely due to that low ownership. I think that he is going to be the lowest rostered fighter at the 9K range. I think he's going to be the guy who does go overlooked the way you described this. I think he fits all the criteria. I think he does have finish potential. I think he does have takedown upside in his back pocket, but he's also going to be the much better fighter with a much better level of competition and a huge step up for someone in Lacerda. If Lacerda doesn't if Lacerda fades over the stretch, has that adrenaline dump being his first fight, Cody Stamen's already going to be way faster. He's going to have the ability to finish his fight in his own right. And I think that he does so at very, very low ownership. That's my kill shot. And it's crazy to say that because Cody Stamen doesn't have the best finishing equity in the past. But, man, he does have that potential to do well this week.
Yeah, and I mean, you've talked me into a little bit more Stamen. As long as I'm making lineups, and I'll be able to squeeze some Stamen there. But yeah, let me see. If I was making 150 lineups, if you're making 150 lineups, how much Stamen do you think you would get to?
It depends what your style is. Are you going for broke? If I'm going for broke, if I want to make that number one lineup, I think he is going to be completely overlooked. So what am I going to have out of 150? Am I going to have 30, 40? I think I have to have at least 20% if I want to go big. Because I'm putting my foot down. I think that this is a fight that I'm going to be high owned on. And if I'm looking at my Lacerda ownership being around that 25, 30% in the first place, how much Stamen do I have to go against the field here, right? So if I have to look at all the plays in 9K range, where am I going to get different? It might be a place where I put my foot down and look to win it all and risk looking stupid in the other side.
Damn. So, yeah, this fight's going to be make or break for you, but it could really go in your favor if this fight does score well, because I don't think either side will gain too much ownership. So I think that's a good kill shot. I will, man, I don't know. Actually, I'm going to go with Munir Lazez. I think he is in play for the TKO. I just think he is levels ahead of everyone that Bonfim has faced on the feet so far. Bonfim looks like an absolute killer on the feet, even though I think he looks even better on the ground. I just think that Lazez, might have a little bit to offer that he hasn't seen yet. So give me Lazez as my kill shot, but we probably need the knockout for him to be on that 100K lineup. I'll go overweight to the field in hopes that it happens, but not too heavily. I think I mentioned like 1/3 of my lineups. That's kind of where I see him, but that should be close to double the field as the way I see it. So go Munir Lazez, but I will also have some hedge lineups on the Bonfim side. Definitely looking forward to this fight. Thank you, Gordo, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. If you have anything you want to promote, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, under an hour, 2 with 15 fights. I appreciate you having me on and for flying through these with me, man. It's been a lot of fun talking, and I wish you the best of luck this weekend. You can find my stuff at GamblesGordo on Twitter. That's where I post everything. I'll have my full card of bets. I'll have any links to my YouTube videos, and I'll also put out my Week Gordo play of the week, because why not, right? You got to have confidence somewhere. In terms of my breakdowns video, as soon as I get off this, I'll be editing it to hopefully get it up in the next couple hours, and that will be on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. You can find me there, all my work, all my hard stuff like that. And then finally, I do videos with the Pup Sports radio team and DFS by the Numbers, Uncle Weezy, Monk Matician, but I will not be there tonight. So you can go check them out in my place. This is the 1 week I'm missing. Blame the girlfriend, blame the anniversary. You got to have them once a year, right? So I'll be doing that, but I will also cheer them on from the sidelines. And once again, thank you for having me on the show.
Hell yeah, for sure. And all those guys that you mentioned have been on the show before. We had Monk on last weekend, and he will be on going forward. He will be my co-host on the Kill Shot. He'll be bringing out all his stats, throwing them your guys' way. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, good luck to you this weekend, Gordo. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Good luck to everybody listening. Go out there and win something. We'll see you guys next time.